As a fan of elegant and well-constructed time travel narratives, I say that I'm quite excited for the concept of this episode. As someone who desperately wants to know more about Philip Wittebane and Belos, who is intimately connected to Wittebane if he is not himself Wittebane, I think that the content of this episode could do a lot to fill in the hitherto sketchy and somewhat vaguely defined backstory of Belos. Belos is concocting a scheme to invade the human realm and unite it with the Boiling Isles in some way, but we do not know why he wants to do this. We don't know what is motivating him to take such a strange action, and we do not know why this is necessarily something that we should be opposed to. Obviously, the whole conquest part of his plan is not to be supported, but he does not really seem as keen on that as someone like Andreas from Amphibia, to name an example a lot of y'all know. He seems much more interested in just getting back to Earth and finding a place without the influence of wild magic, which he views as unstable, terrifying, and corrupt. While his plan is never presented in a positive light, it is also not a major blight on Luce's life at the moment. Luce is most concerned with trying to navigate the internal conflict about the promise that she made to her mom about returning home. Speaking of which, it's quite interesting to think about how Luce changed her mother's words when she remembered them. I did not catch this the first time I watched the first episode of Season 2B, but it's interesting how this is not just a typical flashback that reminds us of what happened. It's very subjective. This is Luce's perception of what Camilla said, which includes that Luce should never come back to the Boiling Isles, when in reality Camilla never said such a thing. It's an interesting detail that emphasizes how shaken Luce is by Camilla's objections to her wanting to stay on the Boiling Isles, to the extent that she took Camilla's words to be worse than they were, and downplayed a lot of the more positive and tender words that Camilla said to her during their interaction. This is a fascinating conflict, but that's such a small and intimate and personal internal conflict has become such a major paradigm-defining issue in Luce's life at the moment, speaks to how she is not particularly worried about the grand plans of our megalomaniacal emperor. She doesn't really know much about these plans other than that they're bad, and we're in the same boat as her. So I hope we learn a lot more about these plans as Luce and Lilith explore into the depths of the past in the upcoming Elsewhere and Elsewhen. Hopefully, the episode sheds a lot of light on Belos and Wittebane, who is connected to Belos in a direct and intimate way. We've been given two brothers, and the brothers really took the spotlight in yesterday's lie when we get back to Earth. They did not have to throw in all these references to the brothers. They're not a critical part of that episode's storytelling, but that they were emphasized to such a degree speaks to their thematic and plot importance going forward. One of these brothers is Philip. The other's identity is unknown. Some have said that Philip is one brother and Belos is the other. and that somehow Belos took advantage of his brother to gain power. That's plausible. Even for those of us who believe that Philip and Belos are one and the same, and I've made it clear in the past that this is my position, we need to account for the importance of this other brother. Perhaps this brother is a more direct ancestor of Hunter, and there is some very tangible connection between this brother and Hunter that was passed through a family line. And whatever this special quality is, requires Belos to use Hunter to fulfill whatever plans Belos has. I don't know what these plans are at the moment. Perhaps they just relate to the Day of Unity. But if these plans are fulfilled, I assume they will not be good for Hunter, as I assume Belos' plans were not good for the other brother, considering that Belos has stuck around while the other brother is nowhere to be found. The show right now is being fueled by the internal conflict inside of Luce regarding whether she should leave the Boiling Isles and be with her mom, or whether she should choose the world she loves, and she goes to great lengths to avoid making that choice, to concoct a scenario in which she can escape the responsibility of having to choose one or the other, and stay in the Boiling Isles without it being her fault, and thus disappointing her mom. But the external conflicts at this point are a little slow. Lumity is cute, but I feel that relationship is treading water a little. Call me a Grinch if you will, but there are only so many cute couple moments I can stomach before I start wanting something a little more substantial. You can only have too much sugar before you develop diabetes. I want something to disrupt or at least test this couple in a way that the show did a little in Eclipse Lake, but could do a lot more of going forward. And of course, there are a few other conflicts, but the show has not really revived them yet. They've kind of simmered down for now. Think about King, who is trying to find his father. He has been wondering if he should be so committed to looking for his father, and he feels much more committed to Ida going forward, but he still wants to find his father. And of course, he received a letter pointing in that direction, but then Hootie just ate it, so that plot line has just been sleeping dormant for quite a few episodes. Ida has mostly triumphed over her curse, so she's not so concerned with that. She's a little concerned about her relationship with Rain, but there is not much she can do about that at this juncture, so it is not an active conflict. Lilith is thankfully coming back into the picture after spending so much time away from us. The first few episodes of Season 2 portray a repentant and listless Lilith trying to find a place for herself. And that was a fascinating storyline, but then they send Lilith away with her mother, starting in episode 4, and she hasn't come back since. I hope that when she does come back, she will be an important part of the show going forward. Part of this is just because she's an interesting character, but part of this is also because the show has been a bit inconsistent with how it has treated her character. It has vacillated between treating her as a main character who should be considered right in the core of the action and gets major plot lines to herself, or just a side character who comes back every now and then. Choose one or the other, but trying to do both at the same time just comes off as a little awkward. And it is natural that Lilith would be the one to lead Luce through the grand folds of time in searching for answers about Wittebane, answers that have thus far eluded both Luce and the show itself. Lilith is not exactly an august scholar, but she was always the nerdy know-it-all at school. She was always following authority, being the old goody two-shoes, and studying whenever she was supposed to, in opposition to Ida, who was the carefree rebel, who was as dedicated to learning magic and being good at it, and committing herself to the study of magic, but who is a little more independent about it. There are these two contrasting spirits, the studious rule follower and the wild-hearted rule breaker. These two contrasting types that have recurred again and again throughout history in pairs, Elliot and Pound, Dufu and Levi. So I have no problem with Lilith being the one to guide Luce through whatever crazy time travel shenanigans will confront the two of them as they progress. It's absolutely the right choice. I just hope that Lilith can become a part of the main cast going forward. She really adds an interesting element to that little dynamic that they have at the Owl House between Ida, King, and Luce. Now, what should they discover? Belos being a mere antagonist would not be particularly interesting. Not every antagonist needs to have a complicated, grandiose, poignant backstory, but for someone like Belos, whom we know very little about, it would certainly be a boon at this point. Especially considering how often the show has teased these little tidbits about the past of Belos and the similarities between him and Wittebane without really committing to actually revealing significant information about Belos. I don't need these major information dumps that make everything completely clear and not mysterious and not ambiguous, but Belos is a bit ill-sketched at this time. He's just a rough outline. If we are to be invested in him as a character, as we should be in any good villain, going forward to the end of the show, we need to know more about him. Now, this does not need to be done through backstory necessarily, but we need to know what he wants, what his ideology really is, what he believes, what his mindset is, and what he is really hoping to accomplish beyond just a mere practical, oh, I want to do this, this, and this level, but on a deeper level, politically, strategically, emotionally, what are you trying to accomplish with your goals? We get that with someone like the Fire Lord in Avatar easily without us having to get a lot of backstory on him. But Belos, since so much of his character is submerged in these little details about his backstory, providing more information about that backstory would be extremely useful. And I believe the show will do that in Elsewhere and Elsewhen. And I hope we can start to get a clear and stable picture on our main antagonist as we come into the final stretch of the show. So thank you all for watching. If you liked what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Donate to my Patreon if you can, and you want to see more videos like this before anyone else can. Keep watching The Owl House. What do you think is going to happen with Belos and Wittebane? Do you think they are the same person? If not, how do you think Belos is related to Wittebane? Anyway, tune in soon for my next analysis. It will be coming soon. That I can promise you. Thank you all again. Adios, comrades.